All right, so we'll get started with our work session. I got a weird microphone here. There we
They're
go.
new.
It's trying to get it set up that way. How about that?
I felt like mine was a little bit too much.
Other people feel that way about your mic as well. Oh! He'll be here all
Coming
night,
from the
folks.
radio guy.
Hey. All right, so you know we did our work session. Jeremy is back to do a recap, and with that, I'll just let you run
Sure.
with it.
Sure. We won't be able to present anything, but you guys have the report in front of you. You may not have been able to have a chance to take a look at it before this very moment. So I'm going to
Oh,
assume.
you don't have it? Oh, yeah, you do.
Oh, there it is now. Okay, cool. Here we go. So my goal was just to walk through, and if you guys just shout things out as you have questions about what this is, but the upshot is you all came to a conversation about a vision for the county in 10 years from now and a preferred vision for the county. And then we had a conversation about how you want to set strategic priorities based on that vision and the feasibility with which you guys would be able to achieve those objectives. If there's a takeaway that I hope just to give you the thesis at the front, it seems that as a council, what you guys came to as a decision is that you wanted an increased number of collaborative sessions that maybe they weren't completely formalized, but some kind of a cadence to a collaborative session with executive branch, with EDC, and with some other influential audiences that you guys had in an effort to achieve your vision that you'd like for the county. So if there's anything you take away, if you don't listen to anything else tonight, I would encourage you that if as you're reading that report, that's something that just came up over and over again as we could see it when we did our analysis. You guys, that even came up when we were doing the priorities workshop. I don't know if you remember, but several times it's like, well, that's something we'd really like to see, but that's usually something the EDC covers, or this is something we think is important, but the executive branch actually has a lot more influence on getting that done. So what it sounds like this council wants is planned sessions where there's a collaborative spirit to let's align on what's important to the county across multiple entities. So with that, I can walk through the report. You guys can stop me when you'd like to. Is that a good plan?
Yep.
All right. The executive summary really just sets out the challenge that you guys asked about, which was how can we align a vision and set actionable priorities? So that's what this document is intended to help you to uncover. What's up, Joe? We did go through 3 different potential futures for St. Charles County. So the way that we framed this was if in 10 years from now, progress was the watchword and growth was what it is that characterized the county, then what would the county look like? And you guys described a scenario in which it was a regional magnet for families seeking safety, quality schools, multi-generational opportunities, the completion of a highway system, high-density population, near family arena, a tech-centric business park. One of the things that's important about this particular vision for you all is it's the one that you saw as most likely. So when you all talked about the concept of progress, the concept of growth, when we use that as the backdrop, you all said this one seems to be the one we're marching toward. If all else remains the same, this is where we're headed. And that's important only because there were things that came up in this that were challenges, like rising traffic congestion, urbanization, strain on local government, like stormwater management came up, interagency collaboration came up as a challenge. So even in this growth arc, even in progress, there are things that are still challenging to be watchful for. We then took a look at collapse. If we assume that in 10 years, everything is into decline, what does that look like for the county? And you all talked about the signals that we would be headed that direction. And that had to do with anchor employers closing up or moving on, school districts that would fail, retail hubs that would collapse, and housing that is just not as diverse as we'd like it to be. So there's somehow homelessness that spikes. You all rated this as not a likely outcome or a likely vision for the county, but what it did tell this group is if you were looking for the signs that we're headed this direction, bless you,
Thank you.
then these would be the signals, right? So the signals we're headed that direction are Larger employers are starting to consider other places. The school districts are looking like they're in trouble. Something like that. Those are throwing you the signs that we're headed toward a collapse scenario as far as you all have understood it. Then we talked about a transformation. So we talked about what, in 10 years from now, if there was a transformation arc, if St. Charles County took on a new position, if there was something new that emerged, what would it be? And we started talking about things like stadiums or logistics hubs and attracting youth sports tourism, Amazon scale opportunities. One of the biggest acknowledgments in this arc was that there would have to be some bets that people would place. These are less politically safe, but more compelling, at least to this body, because you guys rated this as being an important vision. You guys said that this vision scored an 8.3 out of 10. So you're acknowledging as a body that making sometimes that long-term bet on what kind of county might we want to be is an important thing that you all want to consider. If you compare all of the scenarios, the growth scenario offers economic prosperity, but it risks some issues when it comes to how can that prosperity be sustained. The collapse scenario warns of complacency dangers. In fact, I think during the collapse, that was one where we talked about, well, development keeps happening, but it keeps happening by the old script or the old way that we understand development. And the transformation path has some bold reinvention, but it requires investment and some political courage. Overall, you all thought that the growth scenario was the most likely, like I say, but the transformation one actually scored as being more important, which I think is an important thing for the group to consider. You know, in this report later on, I do outline what it means to have visionary bets, as we called them later when we did some of our priorities. Your preferred future is one of collaborative stewardship for resilience. If you took all of those three different arcs, the most important future that you all talked about was that there was a tech-enabled rural-urban symbiosis. There was an education and workforce nexus that was taking place in this county. There was resilience-oriented governance. So there's more collaborative. That's what I was, even signaling at the beginning of this. There's more of a collaborative spirit to what leadership means in the county. And there's targeted risk mitigation. So we're actually going to develop some kind of a dashboard or a way to look out for those warning signs that things might be headed toward a decline before it gets here. So if we start to see those warning signs, we can make different decisions. We can use a different strategy, create new priorities. Questions, comments so far? I've spent a lot of oxygen in the room. Okay, sounds good. I did take a swing at trying to encapsulate in just one or two sentences the spirit of what I heard from you all as your vision for the county. And it's titled Uncommon Ground. So that's rural roots and urban progress thrive together. Agriculture, tourism, and tech hubs link flourishing communities. Lifelong learning powers opportunities. And leaders work as one to build resilience. It's perhaps that last sentence that I think really came through loud and clear during your work session. So as far as this body is concerned, one of the things that's standing between you and the vision that you'd like to achieve is a greater and more deliberate sense of collaboration with other bodies, with other people who have leadership influence in the county. Sense? Right on. What we did, I'm going to actually skip toward over the strategic recommendations and go to the strategic alignment and priorities. This was that exercise where we mapped things on that X and Y axis. So we had vision alignment as the Y axis. The X axis was feasibility. A lot of the feasibility that we used for that exercise was either from data that I received ahead of the session, or it was just you guys on a gut instinct level saying, this seems more feasible than that, So we used both of those as a way to map feasibility. One of the things that we did here when we built on the way you all mapped your priorities is you all had some things that fell in the quadrant of, hey, this is highly aligned to our vision, but it's not as feasible right now. Like we wouldn't be able to achieve it immediately. It's not a quick win, in other words. We had a quick win column and a visionary bet column, right, if you remember, a quadrant. And so in that quadrant of visionary bet, what we've done is we took some of the quick wins and we tried to marry them in with some of the visionary bets. The point of that would be you could use some of those quick wins as momentum toward the things that you all would like to see take place eventually, but you understand that your term here might be over by the time any of it may come to fruition, but you're making that more possible. With the decisions you're making on those quick wins, you can start to set in motion your visionary bets. Does that track?
Yeah.
All right. So there's an articulation of what that graph looked like. We even did some dot voting to see which ones seemed to be the most important to us. Road and bridge maintenance came out on top. Crime prevention came out really high. Rural preservation, though, in visionary bets was highly aligned to vision, and it was voted as being important, but it was acknowledged that its feasibility could be challenging. So its immediate feasibility on what rural preservation really means is something that needs to develop over time, is sort of what you all acknowledged. So then the question became, well, how could some of the things that are quick wins, some of the strategic priorities that are quick wins, be used to sort of bolster or lead in the direction of rural preservation? So that's what's in the balance of the rest of the report. Let's see. Oh, and we also had, I'm sorry, between now and then, we had personal commitments. So a lot of y'all filled out your own personal commitments. We went ahead and took some liberty to link those, your personal commitments, to your strategic priorities. Additionally, there's some legacy potential, meaning how does that strategic priority generate some of those visionary bet outcomes that you all were hoping for? What role might you even be able to play in the short term to get something that's closer to your vision? So the power of visionary bets. So, though politically more risky, the council's generational signature with the 20-year impact horizon. So here again, rural preservation, protecting 30% of agricultural land by 2035, leasing subsurface rights for data center or geothermal energy, creating a replicable model of land stewardship capitalism. Some of these things that came out as a result of the exercise we did, there are some steps that can be taken in the short term that would get you closer to the visionary bets that you're hoping would pay off, and that's one of them. Sports tourism came up over and over again. It even came up, and you guys added it. It wasn't on the original priorities list, and you guys added sports tourism, but it was something that, again, was like, this is important to the county, but it's not something that we could just snap our fingers and have sports tourism show up. So what do we do between now and when we might be able to do that? So taking a look at piloting modular sports complexes or testing out any of those concepts while preserving capital for rural preservation infrastructure. So how can you balance and set in motion some of that? Doing feasibility studies, et cetera, are things that can be done in the short term so that you can lead toward that. Data centers came up a couple of times during the session, and so that's in here as well. Partnering with Missouri's Silicon Prairie Initiative. So partnering with other sources of funding, other sources of revenue for making steps toward a visionary bet. Questions or comments? Dramatic interludes?
Not
Soliloquies?
Yet.
Huh?
Not yet.
No? So the how to start. So this is that quick wins with visionary bridges. So pair road maintenance with rural tourism pilot projects. So definitely road maintenance and infrastructure is such a huge priority for this group. That came through loud and clear. How might you be able to pair that initiative with something like rural preservation? The question for this group strategically is, how can you pair some of the things that are quick wins, highly feasible, with the things that you'd like to see in the long term? Embed crime prevention into sports tourism. And so the way that you can take a look at that are youth mentorship programs that are taking place at the facilities. If you make a more deliberate appeal to young people and you're able to intervene in a certain way, in their lives, you can sort of place more chips in the realm of that visionary bet of crime prevention because you've now made them a part and knit them as part of the community. Accelerating visionary bets is another one. So forming a rural preservation task force, co-chaired by Joe and Mike, and you're going to draft the Tech Agriculture Zoning Charter, right? These are all speculative, obviously, in their suggestion, but they're intended to spark that conversation among the group of how might we be able to activate and get started on the things that are important to us. Sports tourism feasibility study with the convention center, exploring modular and mega project return on investment. What kind of return on investment do other communities have from those larger complexes, and getting that down and being able to embed that as part of the legacy of this group. Work sessions, vision alignment sprints, focusing on growth and transformation priorities, that came out. A legacy dashboard is another speculative design that we thought could be interesting or compelling for you guys, tracking rural preservation acreage, stormwater flood events, collaboration KPIs. Collaboration KPIs, all that means is we've had collaborative sessions, here are the priorities that have come out of them, and here's where we stand with those priorities. But getting yourselves a dashboard so that you're constantly measuring and gathering data on what's important to you. You know, where are we at on the metrics that matter the most to this group, was something that is in front of you as a possibility. Thoughts, feelings, questions? That's basically the report. The remainder of it is actually my offer to you all to help with facilitating any of those collaborative sessions, or bringing them about, or figuring out how you might want to format those. And so that's essentially the report of your retreat, where you all explored the future of St. Charles County.
Thoughts? You're first.
Oh, I'm first.
You're,
It gives us
you're District 1, so you're
Oh, there
first.
I go. It gives us direction where to go. Reading through this report prior to it, I see where you're going with it, and now it's just we have to have buy-in. And that's the most important part, that we all agree that this is a mission for us. Actually, I was talking to my students today because there's 2 NFL teams that are looking for possible new homes in the next 5 to 10 years. And we even had a conversation about, what if they came to St. Charles County? What would that look like? How does that play out? Does that hurt the city or not? And since I teach government, these are great things to bring into the classroom. And when we look at sports venues, it was interesting enough that a lot of them were not in favor of a major league team, but more of a destination for sports programs. Chesterfield has a huge sports complex down there in the valley for baseball and all. Some of the areas are doing some soccer stuff. They were more interested in that because of how much they have to travel. ESPN did the world cheerleading. They just had their national championships and everything else. You know, what can we do to put ourselves on the map that's not what anybody else is thinking about in the Midwest? And I thought that was kind of insightful, and that was one of the things you brought up with sports tourism, especially at the youth level, that I think we really should look at.
So the Bengals, and what's the other team?
Arizona Cardinals.
Oh, we don't want that back.
Bring the Cardinals back. They couldn't believe that I saw the Cardinals practice at Lindenwood back when I was a kid. I'd ride my bike over there during summertime and watch them practice there.
Oh, man.
Hey,
didn't have to
sometimes it's
charge
better the
anything.
second time.
I know.
Just saying.
You don't marry your ex-wife, do you?
I don't know.
Hey, if
Some
there's
people
an
It's
have.
happened, it's happened, yeah.
Joe, what are your thoughts?
It's all good stuff. I guess we just gotta, figure out, how we're gonna move forward with the recommendations. Yeah.
Dave?
Well, I'm still on the Arizona Cardinals thing.
That wouldn't
See
be
if
just
Michael
the
Bidwell
second.
wants to come back?
Yeah,
Didn't they come back already once?
No,
Would this be, no, okay, all right.
no.
but no, I think it's cool. I think we got something to start with. Now we just got to figure out how to implement it. Especially, I don't know how to go about bringing high-tech companies into St. Charles County. That's not my cup of tea, but I'm sure there's some people working on that. So,
Terry?
Yeah, I don't know if it has anything to do with luck, but, you know, some of the bigger things that have come to St. Charles County, obviously the GM plant,
Right.
you know, MasterCard, some of those kinds of things. If you know, if we have this vision, I think in some respects, we have to kind of lay the groundwork for it. But on the other hand, I think we also have to have a little bit of luck. You know, somebody has to say, hey, this is where we want to be, and especially something large, it would have to be a regional kind of thing. You know, that St. Charles County would be a great place for something for the entire region, you know, and not necessarily just for us. So I think the concept of private investment and somebody having a vision along with us, I think those two things are what has to kind of spur the whole deal.
Tim?
Well, I like to proceed with the work sessions idea and how we format that. I mean, I can only just base it off how we formatted them when I worked for Patty York, which was the mayor. Because we had, you know, specific items we talked about. Like, for example, we had a public meeting today on Dingle Dine Road. Let's talk about that. So we can invite the people, and it's a little bit less formal, you know, I don't know, but it just gives us something that we can talk to as a body that I think would be helpful. So I don't want to push that aside. I want to keep pushing that. So.
Okay. Patty, I know you just walked in and we did Jeremy ran through a quick recap, about 15, 20 minutes. I don't know if you had a chance to see his report beforehand. Just trying to get reflections on what did you think about the session? Where do you think we should go from here?
Well,
Nothing like walking right in and,
Well.
hey, welcome.
I enjoyed reading it and seeing what we did. I like the bold initiatives that we can come up with and some working capital on it. I think the fact that we're having work sessions already, you know, has started it going, and I just think we just need to 1, 2, 3. What are we going to do first, second, third?
Okay. One of the things, like when we were talking when this whole thing kind of first started, Matt and Patty had both been part of municipal governments that had done retreats, things like that, of really trying to understand how can the council be more proactive and not so reactive. I think a lot of times as a body we've become, I don't know the best way to put it, reactive is probably the best way I can think of what does the council find as a priority, working with administration. I remember when Jennifer was still here and we were going back and forth and talking about we only have X amount of dollars in the county coffers to be able to spread out. What's the priority for the council? And we were talking about raises at that particular time because we had at least 1 year, maybe 2, where we just didn't have the money to give employee raises. And that was one of the things the council felt very strongly of, hey, the first thing we're going to do is give our folks raises. We're going to try to take care of the people that we have and make sure that we're showing them as much as we can. We appreciate them. We want to focus on retention. Because for a lot of municipalities around the city, some of you may have worked for them at the time, they were poaching county employees. And it's like we've got to do a better job of holding on to our folks. And then finding out where are the areas that we can be more intentional because administration will say, well, what does the council want to do? And quite frankly, we have done a poor job of telling administration what we want to do. So that's one of the reasons why I was excited about Jeremy coming in and just facilitating a conversation for all of us. Joe's been talking about we need to have more work sessions for a while. And I would like to get into doing more work sessions. So 2 things I'd like to do about that. Number 1, I'd like to know from the council, what are the topics that you want to have work sessions on? Tim, I'm going to go out on a limb and say stormwater.
Yep.
I was just shot in the dark at that one. But what other work sessions do we want to have? And can we agree on ground rules for work sessions? Work sessions there for a while prior to COVID and getting into COVID, work sessions became debates and arguments and they weren't productive. So I think that's why we just stopped doing them. We got to a point where it felt like we weren't going anywhere and we weren't making progress on something. the way I've always viewed work sessions, it's an opportunity for the council to learn more and make more educated decisions.
Right.
It's not so much of getting a point across and saying, I want to bang this thing home, but it's really, let's learn more. So if we're talking about emergency services and having Jeff come in and talk about the fact of, hey, when we need dispatchers, what are we looking at? What's keeping us from getting dispatchers? Or looking at corrections and saying, hey, we're short on corrections officers. What's keeping us from that? Or if PD's having an issue, is it equipment? Is it training? Is it pay? What is it? And not guessing of where we are and what we need to do.
Exactly. And just for us to learn, I mean, there's a lot of departments that I don't fully understand everything that they do.
Right.
I didn't know that the county owned the Bluffs, the land that the Bluffs Golf Course was on, stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, I think we and I'm probably speaking for you too, there's a lot of stuff that, with being a new council member, we don't, I mean, there's department heads, I don't know who they are, I don't know what they do, and so we're at a disadvantage, and learning is a great thing I think we could accomplish at a lot of those work sessions, learning about the government and what all they do.
Well, and one of the reasons why I asked Joanne to do more presentations from department heads is for us to see what's coming up down the road. Not necessarily just here's what you're doing right now, but here's stuff that needs to be on your radar. And I go back to, Matt and I have talked about this. My kids all grew up in Fort Zumwalt School District. And when Bernie DeBray saw, I'm gonna need to have a tax increase or a bond issue somewhere down the road, he started a year or a year and a half ahead of the time getting out to chambers and Rotary clubs and things like that and saying, I don't need anything from you right now, but here's what's coming. And I want to put this on your radar, right? So one of the things I just kind of popped into my head was Matthew Seeds is going to have a big agenda item every year with Microsoft licenses for Office, Microsoft Office licenses that we're going to have. Every computer that we have in the county has got to have a license for that for us to be in compliance. Well, that's always a really big item. So rather than that just show up on a consent agenda, within 2 weeks before our meeting, and you go, that's making up a number, $2.4 million in licenses, and people go, holy crap, what's that all about? Just put it on your radar so you know, so you're not surprised. Like when Christine's talking about facilities, and I've got these big buildings that we're gonna have roofs that we're gonna have to put on them, right? Well, that's a specialty of Joe's. He knows a lot about roofing. It's what he's done for X number of years. So that's probably something that we should have a longer discussion about and saying, here's something that is going to be on the radar. I know we talked about a new roof on the Family Arena for 2.5, 3 years of, hey, this is coming. We're going to have to do this. So I would like to know from you guys, what are some of the work sessions that you want us to get on the radar? Unless you may not have an idea right now, but
Capital budget.
capital budget. Speaking of what in capital
Well,
budget?
just, we know we've got the road, the St. Charles County Road Board tax, and we get the presentation from Amanda, but we don't know, like, what's coming, like, we won't know until November what they're thinking about for next year, and honestly, I think the 2-3 meetings that we have in November and December are not enough to really go dive deep into the budget, and, I know the highway department, all these departments put together a capital budget. I'd, like to dive in and learn that a little bit better.
What kind of notice would you guys need to do a discussion on capital budget, kind of where we are, where we're going?
Well, capital is usually a plan, not the budget, because then that informs the budget when you go, but largely, unless something cancels out. So the important time with that is we give you the capital plan 30 days before you have to approve it. The departments are usually scrambling, as are we, to go through all the requests that we get and to boil it down into what the capital tax would be able to support. And sometimes we actually put a little more in the plan than actual fund will be able, because we've got some things we're not quite sure about. So, you know.
If we were
that-
gonna do a work session on capital plan,
August.
August? Okay.
So Mike, I would love to have a work session on, who's selling St. Charles County and who's promoting the county. What else can we do to promote the county? To attract, high-tech businesses?
So, two questions about that. Number one, are you asking more of who's trying to get businesses here? Or are you trying to get people to visit? Is it a tourism discussion or is it a business attraction discussion?
Business attraction
Okay.
discussion. How do we get high-tech companies interested in St. Charles County? Who's doing that now? Who's promoting the county? And what else can we do?
Other thoughts?
I think you kind of know where Joe and I are going to go on this one.
Let's hear it.
Rural preservation. And I know you brought up percentages and everything else and a dashboard with that. I think we're in a battle, it seems like monthly. And I know on the next agenda, we're going to have some issues coming up. And I think it'd be nice to have, not to have all the fights up here, that we can talk about it logically and figure out what is the best plan for the development of St. Charles County. I know we have the master plan and everything else, but as we're told constantly, it's just a plan. It's not set in stone.
Right.
And I think sometimes you and I are kind of left out of that. Would you agree, Joe?
Absolutely.
So, would you want to have a discussion talking about including the master plan in that discussion?
Absolutely.
So, Mike, where do you guys sit on, I know you're working on master plan right now, and aren't you and Tim on that?
Yeah, that's,
Sort of.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
really, I mean, not to, but it hasn't really done any, I don't think it's served much,
No.
the public outreach on this steering committee. I mean, we've had one meeting and I didn't think it really was very productive.
Actually, you've had 3 meetings,
I've only been invited to 2.
Well, and I'm with you, Tim. Most of them are during the daytime, and I can't take off work to go to a daytime meeting. So I've only made it to 1.
Okay. So, Mike, where do we sit on master plan at the moment?
so it's currently we're working through the future land use potential draft maps with the consultant. The consultant put together a summary of the public meetings that it's had. We've had 2 public meetings, focus groups and workshops. And then they're planning on, we're gonna have another steering committee meeting, hopefully, the end of May, early June, to talk about the future land use map as a draft. And then the plan is to have the draft of the plan itself, to the council in August.
In August?
Right now at this point.
Okay. Do you guys want to wait till that draft is done, or do you want to have discussion before that?
It'd be nice if we would have discussion prior to it to weigh in on the draft before everything, because I almost feel like when the draft shows up, here's the final, here's the final say-so check mark versus weighing in on it. I don't feel like my voice has been heard on it at all. My name's on it, and I haven't been really part of it.
Well, it sounds like they're still in the early stages of it.
Not if it's getting presented in August, it's not in the early stages.
We're just in April.
Yeah, but we've been doing this for over a year.
No,
Or summer, was it when did we start?
It started at the end of the summer. Not sure.
In the summer, well, then 3/4 of the way through it.
Yeah, we're almost on the year.
okay.
Yeah, I think it's a good discussion to make, so we can give some input to. You know, this is generally what we want.
So what if
So
we
then
tried to
when
do
the
a
land plan
discussion
comes in.
maybe in June?
That's fine.
Work for you guys? Even though that wouldn't be done, but maybe we can talk a little bit more, Mike, at that point about what is the master plan? How is it supposed to be viewed? I think that's one of the major misconceptions about the master plan with the general public. And we've heard it every time there's a subdivision that gets proposed. Stick to the master plan. But the master plan, there's so much that can change in a 5-year span from the time this version of the plan was done. I mean, the last one that was done, I think Mike Klinghammer and I were the council representatives that were on it. It was 5 years ago that we were doing that. So Mike and I were there. If you think of how much has changed just from infrastructure point of views, from where we were 5 years ago to where we are now, there's a lot of differences that have happened. So, anything else?
Well, I think work sessions would be great on this kind of thing, but even when it comes to the master plan, no matter how much input we all have into this, it's still gonna be done on an individual basis, you know? In other words, every time someone comes up and asks for a rezoning, or
Right.
someone, it's still, we all look at it, from this particular point of view, right then and there, rather than, the big view. And that's, I think that's one of the reasons why the public sometimes gets upset, sometimes why we have divisions, so. And, no matter what we do, I think work session's great. I think the master plan, all the input is good, but it's still gonna come down to individual votes on individual annexations or rezoning mainly.
I'm looking more of, what do you guys want to learn more about?
I got another one.
Okay.
We have two lobbyists, Tom Dempsey and Gibbons.
Mhm.
I've never met Gibbons. And what I think what I would like is, County Executive Elman, I thought, put together a great presentation where you talked about the bills at the Missouri legislature that he's pushing for. But I'd like to hear from our lobbyists. What are they doing on, we approve $125,000, and I know they're working. I'm not certainly suggesting that. I'd like to know what are they pushing? I mean, how are they pushing St. Charles County and Jeff City, I guess is what I'd like to know.
How about if I take that as a legislative session recap?
Yes.
So session's about to be over. What do we have, 3 weeks left?
Yeah.
So 3 weeks left in the legislative session. How about when that's over, if we do a session recap?
Perfect.
Patty, you look like you had something you wanted to add.
Well, some of these are gonna be, I'm sorry I was late, but, 45 minutes, I really don't know on some of these that we're gonna be able to make decisions. So either we're gonna have to keep revisiting them, or maybe once a quarter, we do, like we did the retreat, we take an afternoon. And that's where I had said, I know, Matt, you guys have to drive a long way. Maybe we go to your district, and have an afternoon or morning or whatever, where we spend a little more time. Because I'm just afraid that 45 minutes, and I don't know that everybody wants to come at 5:30. It just seems like some of these, we talk about the rural area and what we want to do, the master plan, will we be able to discuss this in 45 minutes? I think some of these, yeah, because tourism is one that I'm interested in, and, what we want to do in the future, not just in the wine country, but, what else do we want to do countywide? Is there anything else? We had talked about bringing in, kids' sports and things like that. How do we do that? And that's probably a shorter, discussion.
I don't
that
know.
we say, we don't know, but, it can be something that, some of these we're gonna start and say, we haven't made any decisions, but we got a general idea where, where we wanna go, and then come back and revisit that too. But it just from my perspective, I just think some of these are gonna be a lot longer. Anybody disagree?
That's
or-
why I wouldn't have them before a council meeting. I'd have it as a separate night where we're not under a time constraint. We're wrapping up here, but we have 4 minutes left,
Right.
If I may, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But I would suggest, based on what you all said in the 4 hours I spent with you, that I would frame some of your learning opportunities. So I want to learn more about policy. I want to learn more about the capital plan. There are some of those things that are more like sit and gets, where somebody's coming and presenting you something. And as much as possible, I would encourage you to frame them as a what's next session that allows for you to set the tone, that what we're looking for isn't telling us what the facts on the ground are, but tell us what's coming. Like, tell us what's on the horizon. What's going to happen next that you see out there? The other thing I'd encourage is taking on the challenge of something like rural preservation is really important to this council. You guys said it over and over again. It was the balance of the character of the county, what preserves the character of the county and what it means to be here, with what this likely scenario is of growth that we're balancing. They likely, to Patty's point, would be sessions that you'd need more than 45 minutes for you to dig in on the issue and set an agenda. So you'd likely need to find and park some time if you wanted to commit the council to, and also inviting in other people that you'd want as part of the conversation.
Well, thank you very much
Sure.
for making time.
Sure.
And for doing this. And is there anything else anybody else wants to add?
Yep, I think we're good.
All right. Thanks, Jeremy. I
Thanks.
appreciate it.
Thanks, y'all.
So we'll take a break from now until 7 o'clock and get started.
They said, we'll send someone out. I called later on Saturday afternoon. They said, police are out issuing tickets. There were no tickets on any of the cars. They said at the time when I called Saturday afternoon that 20 different people had called complaining about this. And I understand it's this is their big draw, the anime convention. The problem is these people that walk through the neighborhood, they're walking in your yards, they're parking in your streets because, as John said, we have no curbs, so they're parking in your yard. They throw trash, they're rude, they're entitled. They argue when somebody's trying to go up because there's no room to pass. Besides one, there was a fight in front of our houses, people arguing about they use our driveways to turn around. My question is, they demolished the trailer court. They tore down 3 houses with the plans of putting a parking garage to handle this overflow. But that was like 6 years ago, and nothing's been done to address the parking, all that space sits empty. There was a vintage, some kind of another convention 2 months ago. They opened up the old carpet store parking lot for people to park. They had all that grass for people to park. This time, when this is the biggest draw, they had all of that blocked off. So that just impounds the situation. They promote shuttle parking, but nobody uses the shuttle parking. Like I said, it's very dangerous, as Don said, it's very dangerous to try to pull out of your driveway because you can't see if anybody's coming up and down the street. But like I said, my main question is, why spend the money and the time to put up the no parking signs if they're not going to be enforced? Okay? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Gina Orr.
Good evening, Mr. Elam and council members. I don't know if you remember me or not, but my adventure started last year about this time. It was the first meeting that I came to ask for help with this situation with the parking with the convention center. Since then, during numerous emails, mostly with Mr. Elam and I did CC a few others. I guess to make a long story short, I have attended a city council meeting. I was told that it was the county, we don't have a jurisdiction. And then I've talked to others that said, well, that's the city, and we can't do anything with that. So anyway, there was like a pause. I did go and I got over 50 signatures on a petition that I submitted sometime last summer, asking specifically for no convention center parking, violators would be towed. The wording was very specific because Michelle was kind enough to say it's okay if you put no parking in front of my house, but I think a lot of the neighbors that I've spoken with don't want to be restricted by having no parking anytime, just because there are some people that don't respect the neighborhood during these conventions. There were 8,000 people that came to that convention last year. I believe they probably had at least that many this year because it was the anniversary of this convention. So after the petition that I had submitted to, I don't remember who it was somebody with the highway or the
Highway.
The county highway. Didn't really hear much communication after that. And I guess we all just kind of put it on pause. So after the Vintage Home Show that was sometime in March, I was reminded again that convention time is coming because the same thing was happening. I couldn't get out of my street. I live off of Spur. I came up to Valley and I had to turn left rather than turning right to go up to the highway, and nearly got hit by, there were 3 cars that you just can't see. You can't turn onto it. And so that's when Mr. Elam and I really had more communication. I appreciate the ordinance sign. I understand the hearing is June 30th. It's a little bit too far away for this anime convention that came up this weekend. There again, as my neighbors, and I appreciate them coming and showing, because I wanted more voices so that you guys can understand this is a big deal. There were no parking signs. I spoke to non-emergency, 2 police officers on the non-emergency number, and they assured me that the magnitude of this issue was way too big. They didn't know about it soon enough. It's like, what do you mean? I brought this to the council a year ago. So I look forward to seeing what your solution proposal is. Thank you.
Thanks.
Ben Orr,
Thank you. So I'm a resident of the neighborhood next to the convention center. I'm a firm believer that taxation without representation was a slogan that's been ingrained in the very fabric that this nation is built on. For years now, it's been an ongoing problem with the events becoming bigger and drawing larger crowds with each and every passing year. We have tried non-emergency number, nothing gets done. A year ago, we got more involved in local politics trying to make contact with anyone who could help the situation. Fast forward a year, and here we are. There are no parking signs at any time posted throughout the neighborhood. We thought it may be a start to reining in this issue. Knowing that there would be a hearing at the end of June and potentially a more permanent fix, Friday evening, I met my parents at dinner, noticed that the closed-off empty lot at the corner of Veterans Memorial and Beverly had some cars parked there. I decided to stop by the county police building and make it be known what to expect all weekend. Saturday, the mail carrier could not deliver the mail to many of the residents due to the situation caused by the convention center. They called county police and were informed that there's really nothing they can do due to that many cars, and it simply doesn't work that way, is what they were told. Sunday, another call was made, and the officer told us that it would take 3 days to tow the illegally parked cars in the neighborhood, and that there's not enough manpower to do that. So with that, nothing was done. Not a single ticket, not a tow, nothing. Every avenue that we have pursued has been shot down. The city gets the revenue generation of having events and pushes all the issues off onto the county. The county can't handle the load of the issues caused by the city. I feel like our elected officials really have failed us. The can really does get kicked onto the next person. And 6 weeks ago, during the Antiquity Home Show, there was a brush fire in the neighborhood. I can't imagine your guys' feet would be held to the fire and be held responsible knowing of this issue for the past year. You know, if an emergency vehicle can't respond to that.
Thank you.
Raymond Schulte,
My name is Raymond Schulte. I live at 1726 Beverly Drive, there by the convention center. And I'm glad to hear that maybe something might be getting done, because the activities that's been going on at the convention center have become a public nuisance. We've got all these extra cars that can't fit in the parking lots. They park double on the streets. They block our driveways. They block our mailboxes. You know, they leave their trash. They just dump it in the yards, and then we're left to clean it up. It's a public nuisance. I realize that it's been great that we've had some activities there for the younger folks, because they need that type of things. But it's become a public nuisance with so many and the size of these activities, and they need to move them somewhere else to the arena maybe, or somewhere where they got enough parking for all the people, because as many cars as parked there and so close together, you can't meet somebody down the street. You have to try to cut into a driveway or someplace else just to meet somebody. I clipped a car Saturday night because I couldn't move over far enough to keep from having an accident for somebody with oncoming vehicle. Yes, I left the scene of the accident because I was on my way to church, and I knew that by the time we got an officer out there, and even trying to find the person that owned the car, I took pictures of the license plate and stuff, okay? And I called the police department and gave them the information for my insurance and stuff, yeah. But if we ever had a major accident or a fire, there'd be no way we could get ambulances and fire trucks in there. The last couple of years, I've had to have the ambulance to my house for my wife, you know. And luckily, most of them was later at night, but if they'd been during the daytime and we'd have some of this stuff, they would never made it. Yeah. So anything that the county council can do
to eliminate that problem, at least put up some signs that no activity parking on these streets, because Clearview, Beverly Drive, Barbara Drive, South Drive, Christine, Moon Ridge, some of those streets are so blocked with cars, you can't hardly get to them. One lane, one car. So any improvement, would really be greatly appreciated by most of the residents out there. I speak for a bunch of them, but most of them are too afraid to come down here and confront you folks. I think they're scared of the shadows. Anyway, I'm not. Yeah. I've chaired 4 or 5 different organizations over the years, and I'm 91 years old, and I hope to live to maybe be 100, and in the same house. I hope I don't have to go to a nursing home because I paid for my wife's. Yes, yes.
Thank you very much.
That was the last speaker on that topic.
Okay.
Continue or did you?
We can continue. You guys want to continue?
Sure.
How many more speakers?
How many more
We have
speakers?
3 more speakers.
I make a motion to allow more speakers.
Motion's been made. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Bring them on.
Okay, these are speakers on another topic.
Oh, I thought these were,
I thought you were going to present something that you and Patty had talked about. If you want
we
me to
can't do
continue.
that during public comment. We
Okay.
can't do just so you know, we can't do back and forth during public comment, but
Could
we'll
we
get
move
to.
that part of the agenda up?
Why don't we do the speakers first?
Okay.
Okay.
Robert Eno. The topic is Dingledine Road,
Yes.
3 lanes to 2.
Right. My name is Bob Eno. I live off of Dingledine Road. I know most of you, so I appreciate this opportunity to talk. Today at 4:30, there was a meeting, public hearing concerning Dingledine Road. It was conducted by Amanda Brower, and I'm sure you're going to hear back from her. There was about 100 people in the room. They were not happy with this situation going on Dingledine. They're in the process of repaving it. There's a stepping process that has to take place, but they're getting close. They think they will have decisions by the end of May and put it out for bid sometime along that line. And they're cutting it down from 3 lanes to 2 lanes with a bicycle. Now, this seems really odd to me. There are so many people that live back there now. Dingledine Road is used for people that live off of Towers Road, off of Pittman Hill Road, Greens Bottom Road, and cut through there to get to Walmart, Schnucks, and so on. That's what the road's for, Some people had a comment or a complaint about speeding. I personally haven't seen that. I don't see, you can hear motorcycles or whatever once in a while, but typically the people obey the law. It's 35 miles an hour. It's not very slow. Now, if it was 20 or 25, probably a problem. Anyway, the point being, all the people live there. I left that meeting at about 20 minutes to 6 and drove down Dingledine Road, and I was in a string of cars, about 15 people, 15 cars. Up ahead further, there was another string of cars. Behind me was another string of cars. Now, my point being, everyone was peeling off and turning left and turning right and going into those subdivisions that live there. Several of them are going to go straight on down the road at Towers Road. I asked her about Towers Road. If you build this to 2 lanes and take away the center lane, the left turn lane, what is that going to do to Towers Road? How are you going to deal with it at that end? Because Tim Baker, our county councilman, was in the meeting and he asked the question, why can't you build lanes outside of the road? You've got easement and right-of-way all the way down through there. And she said, it's only 8 feet. Well, 8 feet seems plenty, She said, well, it has to be 10 feet. Well, who made that decision? She didn't have an answer for that. The point being, what are they going to do in Towers Road? They're going to take away that center lane? They're going to do away with that then and turn it into 2 lanes? I'm going to touch on a name from years ago, Joe Nichols. He was the head of the highway department. Some of you may or may not remember him. He's obviously long gone, but he talked about in a community meeting at Waypoint Church, which is First Baptist Church, and people showed up and he talked about these roads from Independence Road, Wolfram Road, Pittman Hill, and how they had to be at least 3 lanes wide in order to accommodate the people that were going to be built there. And sure enough, those roads got built about 20 years, 25 years ago. And so far they've held up. There's growth there. There's what's going on. I was hoping the county executive would be here because I was going to ask him to get involved and ask him to contact Amanda and just say, how did this happen? Why are they narrowing this down from 3 lanes to 2 lanes? Thank you all very much for your time. Appreciate it very much.
Michael Forrestal regarding bill number 5369.
The bill that you're speaking on, Mike.
Oh, RZ 2501.
Right.
Correct.
That's
Mike-
what she was saying.
Okay, I'm sorry. Mike Forrestal, live at 2836 Dyer Road. Obviously, the development, the TR Hughes development is tabled. So I got to thinking about this, and while it's tabled, I wanted to invite the council members out to St. Paul. And I can take you around, I can show you around my property, and that way you can get an opportunity to see firsthand our perspective of why we're opposed to this. And we can show you firsthand the traffic concerns through Riverdale and whatnot. So anyway, just we thought while it's tabled, while there's nothing going on, I wanted to invite everyone out. I'll be happy to organize it. I can send an email out to you to get something communicated, see if we can get everyone on the same date, or if we can't do that, we can have whoever's available to come out one day and whatnot. But I just wanted to throw that out there and see if it was something, if you're willing to, I'll try and get that organized. So,
Thank you.
all right. Thank you. Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you.
Arnie Dienoff.
Good evening, members of the council. My name is Arnie C. A.C. Dienoff, County Public Advocate. First, I want to go through 3 agenda items that are on the consent agenda that are very important and really need your immediate attention and discussion and debate. First of all, the county police. They are asking for a drone transit van, a mobile command center for the drone unit. My question is drug forfeiture fund or general funds being used? I asked the police chief and he said it's general funds. I'm not sure why this doesn't qualify for drug forfeiture funds, but it's $69,120. And my question is, we're buying it from Broadway Ford in the city of St. Louis, helping their economy and not our St. Charles County economy, especially when we have 2 Ford dealerships right here in our own county. Do we really need this purchase of a vehicle? We have a number of current vans and current forensic vehicles that sit idle over at the county police station on Tom Ginevra and O'Fallon. And so my question is, why can't they use that? Because the drone unit is probably only going to be used 3 or 4 or 5 times a year for major events. Do we really need to buy a $70,000 vehicle? Motorola services renewal through the Communications Dispatch and Alarm Department or County Communications, $24,528,000. That's a huge sum to be paid by Motorola. Motorola, a sole source. I'd at least like to see some discussion by the county council. Parks, $9.3 million loan. There will be a lease agreement with Region Banks, the County Economic Development Council, and the U.S. Small Business Administration. And my question is, it's for the county-owned golf course and the lease is with Advanced Golf M Bluffs LLC. What is our county liability if they default on the $9.3 million? I'd like to hear some legal advice from Mr. O'Sullivan and some discussion about this very important topic. We want to make sure that our taxpayers aren't on the hook for $9.7 million of this loan/lease agreement. And I would like to see you hire Jeremy from Bold Our Future consulting contract. First of all, I'd like to see that consulting contract under Chapter 610.021 and 610.022. How much are we paying Jeremy for this, for the session that he held with you? And under Chapter 610.021 and 022, 023, I'd like to see the lobbyist reports again. I haven't seen one yet this year from Michael Gibbons or Tom Dempsey. That we're paying $225,000 plus expenses, mileage, lodging, meals, etc. And finally, the recordings for the April 9th and April 15th meeting of the County Council workshops and the discussion. I'd like to see it be made public and made it transparent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That was the final speaker.
Final speakers. That wraps up public comment. That moves us to oral report from the county executive.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, pursuant to your request, the departments come in and report. Jeff Smith is here from Emergency Communications tonight. So he'll be talking to you about what's going on and what's going to be going on.
Welcome, Jeff.
Good evening. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Jeff Smith, Director of Emergency Communications. I know there's a few newer faces on the council. I've had the honor of serving in that capacity for the past nearly 11 years, it'll be 11 years in July. And I'm going to spend a little bit tonight, there we go, a few minutes tonight telling you about what's going on in our department and kind of what we are all about. So, big picture, these are the high-level things that we are responsible for in county government. We manage and operate the countywide 911 system. We manage and operate the public safety radio system used by all agencies in the county, whether we dispatch for them or not. Obviously, we do police, fire, and EMS dispatching, and we oversee and coordinate all addressing and street naming in St. Charles County. As far as the 911 system goes, there are 6 called primary PSAPs, public safety answering points, places that answer 911 calls. All 911 calls are answered by a law enforcement agency first. Those are us, St. Charles County Department of Emergency Communications, answering for St. Charles County Police. Wentzville Police Department answers calls for themselves and for Estelle. Lake St. Louis for themselves and Cotterville, and then O'Fallon, St. Peters, and St. Charles City. We also operate out of our facility in O'Fallon what's known as a secondary PSAP. That's the folks that do all the fire and EMS dispatching. Again, when you're dial 901, you get a law enforcement agency. If you have a fire and EMS emergency, they'll transfer your call to that group for dispatching. In 2024, countywide, there were 128,601 911 calls placed in our county alone. We, the Department of Emergency Communications, didn't handle all of those. Those numbers at the bottom show the calls that we handled. We answered 36,872 police-related 911 calls, and 39,127 of the 128,000 were transferred to fire and EMS for processing. Those, again, are the agencies that we do police dispatching for. County Police really is the primary, who is also Weldon Spring Police, Garden Prairie, and the other contract patrol areas. We are the communications points for the Sheriff's Department and the Department of Corrections. We really don't dispatch them on calls. They kind of do their own thing. But if they're out and about and they need to talk to somebody, call something in, we're who they talk to. County Police last year, we had 90,000 CAD incidents. So those are incidents where someone dialed 911 and we dispatched a police officer, as well as officer-initiated incidents, traffic stops, pedestrian checks, etc. Those are all the fire and EMS agencies we dispatch for in the county, basically all of them, including a portion of Old Monroe. Old Monroe Fire Protection District has about 6 square miles of their district that come into St. Charles County. We'll dispatch them for calls in that 6 square miles. Last year, just under 69,000 fire and EMS related calls were dispatched. The public safety radio system that we operate in cooperation with Jefferson County 911 and St. Louis County, we call it SLATER, St. Louis Area Trunked Emergency Radio System. Our portion of that project consists of 1 master site that's located at the EOC, 2 prime sites, one at the EOC and one in Wentzville, 14 tower sites around the county, which contains the RF equipment for those transmissions, paging for fire and EMS, and the activation equipment for the outdoor warning sirens. We support 7 dispatch centers, so those 6 primary PSAPs that we talked about, and then the old dispatch center in Wentzville is our backup center, so that's the 7th center that we also have equipment in. There are, just in our county alone, just over 3,000 mobile and portable radios operating on that radio system, and about 10,000 times, just under 10,000 times a day, somebody's pushing that button on the side of their radio trying to talk to somebody else. So it's a pretty busy system. Here are the current projects that we're working on. We're working on a 911 hardware refresh project at all of the PSAPs and the data centers. We're working at transitioning our 911 system to what's called next-gen 911 call routing. We're working on a station alerting project, something called Comms Coach, Rapid SOS, and radio system upgrades. And I'll spend just a few minutes now talking about each one of those individually. So as far as the phone system itself, we're replacing all of the hardware again at the two data centers that house our equipment. One is in St. Louis, the other one is in Chicago. We're upgrading our network to a true called EZNet, which is an emergency services IP network. We're adding 4 additional 911 positions to that backup center in Wentzville, so that all 10 positions out there have 911 capabilities. We're replacing the physical phone sets and the backroom equipment at each one of the PSAPs, and that project should be completed sometime this summer. That's a 7-year expenditure of $6.4 million for that project. 3.6 or just under 3.7 million is the county's portion of that. The other PSAPs make payments to the county, which makes up the difference. The next gen call routing, again, once we switch over to that EZNet, we'll replace a process called selective routing. That's an AT&T process. They have a selective router in Webster Groves. That particular piece of equipment is now end of life, end of support for going on, I think, 14 years. So it's held together with duct tape and baling wire and things like that. I shouldn't say that. It does work, but it is extremely old technology, and it is no longer supported. So with the new IP-based call routing, the location information that we receive from callers, we'll receive that quicker. It's more reliable, and it's more accurate. Some of the features of true NextGen 911 are text to 911, which we do have today. We will have the ability to receive photos that are texted to us, eventually live streaming. And again, this project should be completed later this year in the fall or end of summer. That's just under $5 million for 7 years. And again, our portion is 2.2, with again, the balance of those payments coming from the other municipalities that answer 911 calls. We're working on a station alerting project for our fire and EMS bases throughout the county. That's a radio and IP-based alerting system. So just real quick, the process for us now, when we get a call, someone dials 911, you have one person answering the call, putting information into the CAD system. Once the information goes into that CAD system, it goes into a queue and somebody else can dispatch it. They pull that call up out of the queue and say, what are the recommended units to go to this call? They have to hit submit. Then they go over and they manually select all these tones. They have to listen for the tones to go out, and then they verbalize it. This will basically replace most of that. The person will take the call, put it in the CAD. The person will call the call up out of queue, say what are the units that are recommended. Basically, once they hit commit them, the system will just do all the rest. It will automatically select all the tones. It's basically Siri's voice. Well, there's a couple of different voices. We have 2, depending on which of the modes you're receiving it from. There'll be a male voice for over the air, and then there'll be a female voice that they hear inside their fire stations. But that way we can do multiple dispatches at the same time. Just as fast as that dispatcher can just keep hitting that commit button, the system will just stack the calls up and just start dispatching them one right after another. So we'll be quicker in that regard, and it'll free up a little bit of dispatcher time. That's a $96,000 investment up front, and then about a $5,000 annual maintenance fee just to keep it going. And we're paying for the equipment that's at dispatch. All of the equipment that's at the fire and EMS bases, those agencies are responsible for procuring and paying for. We're implementing a product called Comms Coach, which is an automated AI-driven quality control and coaching tool. It'll take all of our CAD, 911, and radio traffic and monitor that in real time and give the dispatchers and the dispatch teams basically real time feedback on their adherence to our policies, whether or not it detects stress in their voice, et cetera. Basically what it'll do is allow us to set thresholds where we can recognize people for doing exceptional work and then identify areas where we might need to be able to improve. But we can do that in real time, basically. Right now, we use a small percentage of the calls, and it's a manual process to go back and quality control all those. Again, that should be online this summer. And we are one of 3 early adopters in the state of Missouri, and so it's a $26,000 price annually, and as long as we continue to use it, they've guaranteed us that our price won't go up. So we've locked that one in. We also are implementing an expanded use of a product called Rapid SOS. We have the free version of that now. We're going to the paid version. It's basically 911 without the FCC involved. So it's an amazing system. We can see on a map outside of our 911 system where callers are calling from. We can get their callback information. Some of the neatest features about it. So right now, if we have someone who calls 911 and there's a language barrier, we have to dial another company. It's called Language Line, and they get somebody online and they do the translation for us. This product will actually pick up the call, listen to it, start translating the voice to text for our dispatchers, and then what we type back in English will be translated automatically to them in their language. So that will be amazing. The other thing that it will do, I mentioned location and phone number information. We call that Annie and Ally, so automatic number information and automatic location information, which is generally a 911 thing. This product will allow us to get Annie and Ally information on all calls that come into our center, whether you've dialed 911 or whether you've dialed a 10-digit phone number. Again, this one should come on the fall of this year sometime. That's an $8,000 initial setup, $14,000 annually. We are looking at, that's just for us, we're looking at what it would cost to expand that to all the other PSAPs if they wanted to get involved and pay their portion. So it would be nice to make that available to everyone that's answering 911 calls in the county. Radio system upgrades. So a couple of pieces to that. First is the capital expenditure, which is replacing all of the current dispatch consoles at all of the dispatch centers in the county with a new, the current product is end of life in a couple of years, and so this will transition everything to the new, it's called Command Central Access dispatch consoles. It's virtualizing the prime sites, so if you can imagine inside of our tower sites, there's multiple racks of equipment. Right now, our prime sites take up about 3 racks of equipment. This virtualization will basically be about the third of 1 rack. So we'll use a lot less energy, which hopefully will not only help with just general electric costs, but obviously we have to keep those tower sites air conditioned, and so hopefully it'll bring those costs down as well. And we're going to digital base stations instead of the analog base stations that we're using now. That's just under $16 million expenditure. 2 meetings ago, I believe, you all passed the resolution supporting the sale of bonds to fund that up front. So we'll pay those bonds back in 15 years. There's a dedicated fund, part of the capital fund sales tax that's dedicated for radio. That fund will be sufficient to make those bond payments. So that will not be a burden on the county's general revenue fund or the general capital sales tax fund. And then operations part of that will extend our maintenance contracts through 2034, and we'll add cybersecurity. It's called MDR, Manage, Detect, and Respond. So their NOC will manage, will listen to our radio system at all times, look at all the outside traffic that might be trying to intrude into it. It's basically a big computer network. And so they will manage that. They'll detect. If they find anything, they'll be responsible for responding and restoring service if there's any loss of service. Again, that's $8 million through that 2034 time period, and that dedicated fund is sufficient to make those payments as well. As part of this, not necessarily a direct impact to the county, but certainly helps out all the fire and EMS and law enforcement agencies out there in the county if they're looking to replace their radio systems. So from 18 months from the time we signed this contract with Motorola, they're going to offer a 42% discount on all of their equipment to those users, and that's a significant savings. So how do we do all that? If we were completely staffed, we have 61 people in our department, myself, administrative assistant and assistant director, 1 training quality assurance officer, 4 dispatch operations managers, we're currently down 1, 8 dispatch supervisors, 36 dispatchers, down 6. So we are tremendously better off. Several years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, when I stood in front of you, we were looking at options on maybe contracting with dispatch agencies and different things like that to fill the gap. So we are much better off. The county did a job fair last week or the week before last, I believe it was. And we've got our positions advertised, and the last time I checked, we had 23 applications. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to fill those remaining 6 spots. Our folks work we have 4 shifts. They work 12-hour shifts. They rotate back and forth. They work 36 hours one week, 48 the next, and every 2 months they switch from day shift to night shift. So if we're fully staffed, nobody's off, there'll be 2 dispatch supervisors and 9 dispatchers, so 11 people operating out of our center. We have 1 communications system manager, 4 radio techs, system engineer, 2 CAD techs, and 1 GIS person. Our budget this year is $17.9 million. 7.2 of that is personnel costs, 7.1 is operating, and 3.6 is capital. And this is how we gather those funds. So that first line item, the dispatch and alarm fund, is a dedicated property tax. that was passed years ago, primarily to fund fire and EMS dispatching. We use that fund for fire and EMS dispatching and for the administrative functions of our department. This part of that 17.9 million, 6.2 of that is from that fund. 4.9 will be generated from the property tax this year. 1.3 million is from reserve funds, but at the end of this year, our reserve fund in that particular fund would be $260,000. The 911 fund, $1.9 million expenditure this year. The only dedicated tax that we have for that is a landline tariff tax. Obviously, landlines are going away. That fund is projected to generate $200,000 this year. And we do get some money on prepaid cellular. We anticipate about $50,000 there. And then those PSAPs that are answering 911 calls, we get about $775,000 from them. The $875,000 difference will come from the county's capital general capital tax. The radio fund, $6.5 million. Again, 4.2 of that is from the tax that'll be generated this year. About $800,000 is what we call subscriber fees. That's basically every mobile radio and portable radio that's on the system. Much like you pay a fee for a cell phone, all those agencies pay us a fee one time a year for those radios that are on the system. And so that's $800,000. 1.5 of that, 6.5 is from their fund balance. And then our police dispatching. So one of the things that I should throw out if you don't know, none of the agencies, fire and EMS, that we dispatch for pay us anything. We fund their dispatching from that tax. The only thing that they do pay us is they're responsible for their subscriber fees on their radios, which is a separate agreement. We obviously do police dispatching, and so the county's been very careful over the years to make sure that we account for those funds completely separately, not part of the dispatch and alarm fund. So the police dispatching portion of what we do and support of the CAD system and those types of things is $3.3 million, and that comes from the county's general revenue sales tax. We are an CALEA accredited agency, have been since 2020. We were just renewed that last year, and we're going through our first CSM review at the starting Friday of this week. And that's the Department of Emergency Communications in a nutshell.
Any questions for Jeff?
Yeah, I might have one. This was 14 years ago, and I was involved along with another councilman about talking to the state legislature about funding 9/11 and just the ridiculous concept that landlines would continue to fund this. So we actually went up there and talked to some folks about having these cell phone companies, charge their minute little fee. Never went anywhere. Is something like that still being discussed, or is that just
So
gone?
everybody has to be last at something. Missouri was the last state to pass legislation that allowed local governments or local taxing authorities to ask the voters to put a tax on your cell phones. That was passed, it's probably been 4 or maybe 5 years ago now. The county has never taken the position that that's something that they wanted to do, but we do have the ability now, if we wanted to ask the voters for that, we now have the ability to ask for that tax.
So that they put it up to the counties rather than the state?
Correct. So at the state legislature, they approved it so that we could do it. But again, the county has not done anything.
Thank you.
Question, Jeff.
Yep.
Do we have ETA on that projection that the fire chiefs were asking us about for the?
I've been working on that a little bit. I've talked to Chief Casey a little bit back and forth. I'll have to get with Mike and probably Bob a little bit on the personnel cost projections, what numbers they might use, because again, that's part of our budget that's a little confusing for us as department heads, because a lot of that personnel costs are outside of our hands as far as what raises are going to be and what health insurance costs are going to be. But we've got a pretty good handle on what our regular operating expenses and what our capital expenditures will be. So as soon as I get with them and can get that number, we'll be able to put something together.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you, good job.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. That was very informative. That brings us to the consent agenda, assuming there's nothing else from county executive. Okay. That brings us to the consent agenda. Any items to be removed from the consent agenda?
I had a quick question on the facilities about the clerk and courtroom expansion.
So,
Just a,
yeah, we have to pull it to discuss it.
okay, let's pull it.
Make a motion to pull it?
I make a motion.
I'll second that.
Motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those approve? It is pulled. How about anything else? Can I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the rest of the consent agenda.
Second?
Motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. It is approved. Councilwoman York, facilities is yours.
It's probably a very simple question. I thought it was great work how you put this all together, but I've always heard that we're really tight in that building. Is this going to be enough? You know,
Currently,
for all
Yeah.
the facilities to do what they need to do? Is it like taking everything apart and putting it back together in a better way? Is that what you're doing?
It's a step in the right direction. So we've really analyzed that building, trying to figure out where and how we can fit additional courtrooms in. Right now, the type of courtroom that they're lacking are jury courtrooms. In the last, 2 or 3 years, we've added 3 non-jury courtrooms. We added those where we could, and then we basically became tapped on the floors in which they currently have courtrooms. So I will say that the current presiding judge really kind of looked at some things a little bit differently, and we started shaking up where we would put certain aspects of the court proceedings. And so we were able to free up to where we can get 2 more jury courtrooms.
Perfect.
After we've completed this work, which will shift some clerk spaces around to be able to accommodate for that, we're then officially tapped on that building. So we do think that that will get us, about 5 years, we can hope,
Okay.
for space, but then we will be tapped. But we're already trying to evaluate what are we going to do next.
Okay.
So this is a step in the right direction.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Well, then I make a motion, we approve
Second.
this.
Motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes. Thanks,
Thank you.
Christine.
Thank you.
That brings us to bills for final passage, starting with Bill 5381.
Bill number 5381, an ordinance granting a water easement to Public Water Supply District Number 2 along Forestell Road through Newmelly Lakes Park.
Any questions or comments about this bill? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Bill number 5381, an ordinance granting a water easement to Public Water Supply District Number 2 along Forestell Road through Newmelly Lakes Park. Councilman Swanson,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilman Brazel, Councilman Elam,
Yes?
Councilman Hammond,
Yes.
Councilman Hollander,
Yes.
Councilwoman York,
Yes.
Councilman Baker.
Yes.
Bill number 5381 passes. Bill 5382 is next.
Bill number 5382, an ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute an agreement on behalf of the police department with the city of St. Charles, on behalf of the St. Charles City Fire Department, for tactical medics for the county regional SWAT team.
Any questions or comments on this bill? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Bill number 5382, an ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute an agreement on behalf of the police department with the city of St. Charles, on behalf of the St. Charles City Fire Department, for tactical medics for the county regional SWAT team. Councilman Brazel, Councilman Hammond,
Yes.
Councilman Elam,
Yes.
Councilman Hollander,
Yes.
Councilwoman York,
Yes.
Councilman Baker,
Yes.
Councilman Swanson.
Yes, ma'am.
Bill number 5382 passes. That's it for bills for final passage. No bills for introduction. No action to be taken on the tabled bill. I understand that's still going to stay on there. Which brings us to announcements and miscellaneous. Anybody have anything
Well, I
for
know
that?
you do, but I do.
Go ahead.
Okay, so today we had a public hearing on Dingle Dime, and one thing I did hear a lot from the folks is that there wasn't a lot of notice. I know Kevin Killeen sent a press release, and people just don't get that. And I know that some counties and cities in the past have put one of those traffic signs, a flash, public hearing on Dingle Dime, Do we, first off, do we have one of those signs that the highway department, that you could, like a trailer, put a sign out there and it'll flash,
We do, one of the.
Okay. Could we make sure that we have that, like, maybe a week in advance, set it out on Dingle Dime, let them know that a public hearing, because I think that's one of the major issues I heard tonight, is no one knew about it. They saw it because of a Facebook post, and I think we're missing the boat on notifying people, and we need to do a better job doing it. I mean, overall, I think they were prepared. The meeting got a little contentious, but I just don't know if we heard from everybody, and that's my concern as being their council representative, that we're not hearing from the number of people that we should be. And I just think we need to do a better job of getting the notice out.
So you're talking about anytime we have a public hearing of any kind
Well,
or
like I
something?
mean, we have a lot of roadway public hearings where we talk about the road and we present plans and we ask for input. We need to be notifying them,
Right.
other than the
You
press
can-
release that no one sees. I mean, that's how I got it, because I'm on the email chain, but, you know, we could put a sign out on the road, public hearing, Dingledine improvements, Mount Zion, or Zion Lutheran School this time, you know, whatever.
Good idea.
Yes, the answer to your question, but hopefully we were doing more than just the press release, and Adam's here, I think we were on social media as well, trying to get.
And a lot of people, and that came up, a lot of people just aren't on social media. So I just think people who drive that road, when they see that, that will go way further, in my opinion, on notifying the public. So, thank you.
I think that's a good idea.
Mr. Yes, Mr. Swanson.
On a light one, Mike came up and sent out an invitation. Will you guys be willing to come up into St. Paul and take a look at what's going on
Sure.
up there? Okay, I'll facilitate with you, Mike, set up a time, and I'll send out to everyone. Would you guys prefer more of a weekday or weekend, just as a general? Or would you want us like set up 2 dates?
We can't all go at the same time unless we're going to post it as a public meeting. So I would say we break it up, because being as someone who was talking with the Councilwoman York, trying to get 7
Right.
schedules put together, good luck with that. So I would say smaller groups are going to
All
work
right, so if
better.
we can set up 2 dates, and then we'll get with it, and that way you guys can see what's going on. That's all I had. Thank you.
That sounds great. So go ahead.
4 people makes a quorum,
It does.
so it'd have to be
3 or less would be
3 or less.
helpful.
Okay.
Yeah. So I wanted to speak a little bit about the parking at the convention center. And I would tell you, the short version of this is, I feel like there was a lot of miscommunication on our part. Talked to John Lyons earlier today. Actually, Councilwoman York and I have been talking about this issue all day long. So Captain Hunt from the police department called this morning. I know he's talked with Chief Jinks over at the city.
Brian and I have been talking to people all day too. I was out there and I've talked to the chief as well. I would say, first of all, to say we didn't do our best this past weekend is to say the least.
Yes.
We had the signs up. Apparently, the police department didn't see the signs and didn't know they were there. So they didn't write tickets to them. Inside, their patrol people and their in-house people had 2 different messages. So we managed to totally miscommunicate, and for that, we apologize. So this coming weekend, I don't believe there's anything big. The weekend after that is another one of these big ones coming on. So the police department has a plan for how they're gonna man that neighborhood. The chief at city has said he will cooperate. He said he'll do everything he possibly can as well. I don't know, and we're gonna try to talk to the city about why they roped off that extra parking that they had, that one of our speakers spoke about. The old carpet store apparently is still a property of the convention center, which no longer is the Sports Authority, which is no longer part of the convention center. But there's also a lot across the street from that I understand has been used for overflow parking in the past. We gotta figure all that out before they start this new convention on the 7th. I don't know, Chief, if you wanna speak to what you guys are gonna do, but I understand you're gonna be in the neighborhood, so.
Yeah, we absolutely.
Come on up and speak, yes. That's what I said, a couple big tow trucks.
So like Joanne said, there was a lot of information that wasn't shared between departments, and so for that, we apologize. But I know we have an event tomorrow morning we're going to watch. It's a big prayer breakfast for law enforcement, but we don't want to end up parking a bunch of police cars in the neighborhood either. So we'll be out there for that. But we've got the event scheduled for the convention center. So we'll put officers in the area, we'll assign them there, and they'll stay there the entire time. But we have to have an ordinance to enforce, so as long as we have an ordinance to enforce, we can enforce it. And there were some things they missed. They certainly should have written tickets for any blocked driveways or mailboxes. That was a miss. That's been corrected. So, okay.
I would also point out that I talked to John today about the public hearing that they scheduled for June and asked for that to be moved up. So asked for that to be added to the council agenda at the first available opportunity that we can make that happen. So that's going to be added earlier. There was a little bit of miscommunication on do we have to wait 60 days or does it have to be done within 60 days? So I think we're going to get that done sooner rather than later. So that should be coming. With the signs that are up, I believe we can get the enforcement done. So God willing, we have a solution for it and you shouldn't have to deal with this anymore. I did find out though today, interesting, just FYI, if the road is packed and there are cars on both sides of the road and a fire truck doesn't have room to make it through, the fire truck will run over the cars to get through. So just FYI to the public, if you're ever looking at parking on a road that looks really narrow at that point, if a fire truck needs to get through, they will run over your car to get to someone who is in need of emergency services because your car is not more important than that life. So just so we're clear with the public, your car's in the way, that's between you and your insurance company because you parked in the way. So word to the wise. Hopefully that helps you have some understanding of where we are. I think we have a plan to move forward and we should be good. We can discuss after the meeting if you have other questions. But Councilwoman York is your point person on this moving forward, but I think we've got a plan. Is there something you wanted to add?
And we want you to come and speak at the public hearing. I know that we have a property down on Main Street, and everybody is always parking in our parking spaces, so I understand there's nothing more aggravating than somebody taking your parking. I know a lot of people are saying they don't want no parking. You want to be able to, come and go as you please, and I understand that too. But we can't give tickets out and we can't tow anybody unless they're in a no parking area. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about do we or do we not want a no parking along one side of the road or the other. I think that's something really important that you all that you all decide this is really what we need. We really do need the no parking. I wish we could just come in and just tell people you can't park here. There's a convention going on. We looked at residential parking. That would be harder on you all than it would be anybody else, but I know it would be really hard on the police department too to figure out who lives there, who doesn't. Residential parking, this kind of thing, is not an easy thing to do either. We can look at maybe no parking, and I didn't ask you this, Joanne, but maybe we can look at, maybe no parking on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday or something like that when maybe that way during the week you can park there. On the weekends, you can't have, strangers parking out front. We're talking about all these things, but we do want, you to know that we don't want you. There's nothing worse than you can't get your mail and you can't get in your driveway and you can't get down the street. And my son has driven a great big pumper truck, and he told me once that they just plowed right through, and they're big enough that they can move anything in front of them. So thank you, and if anybody needs my phone number, let me know, and we'll take it
Yes,
from there.
sir.
Just a quick question, because I have, up on 4th Street, it's residential parking only. Because my buddy, his parents owned that house there for the longest time, and you had the tag, and if you parked up there, you may not see your vehicle in a few hours. So I don't know how big of a struggle it would be, and all it was, if I remember right, it was a green tag that held, or it was off the rearview mirror, or there was a sticker that was applied. What you guys are going through, first, thank you for showing up. A lot of times us and the other districts don't know what's going on. I have been to the convention center. I've never parked on those streets because I respect your guys' property, but I think having a residential parking only, maybe it's a struggle, I don't know the ins and outs of it, but that could be an easy solution. You don't have the tag, you get towed.
Well, and they'd
Nope.
all have to come in and they'd have to register their cars, and then what do you do when your relatives?
I think the problem they're having right
things like
now,
that.
you guys wouldn't mind coming up once every 2 years to register a vehicle. But, I'm just throwing something out there.
Talk with Patty after the meeting, and that way you'll be good. Anybody else got anything?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thanks for coming. Hey, Roy. Before you run away.